The battlefield was silent. Only the cold wind moved through the broken metal and burned ground. Smoke rose slowly into the sky, carrying the smell of fire and death. Ships were destroyed, weapons were scattered, and the ground was painted with the memory of war. Among the ruins, a small figure lay hidden under a piece of broken wall. It was a young alien girl, her skin pale, her body weak, and her eyes half closed. She had been left behind. Her people had escaped, running to save themselves. Leaving her with nothing, she tried to call out once, but no one answered. Her voice was too weak, her body too broken. The silence around her felt heavy, like the world had already decided her life was over. She remembered the last words of her own people. Too weak, too slow, not worth saving, they had said. Those words cut deeper then. The wounds on her body, she closed her eyes, thinking this was the end. Alone, forgotten, abandoned. But then, she heard something. It was not the sound of her people, nor the enemy she feared. It was footsteps. Heavy but steady. Voices followed, speaking in a language she did not know well. It was the humans, the ones she had been told to fear. Her heart began to beat faster. Her people had said humans were dangerous, cruel, and cold. They said humans destroyed everything they touched. She tried to hide deeper under the broken wall, but she had no strength left. The footsteps grew closer, the voices clearer. One voice stood out, calm yet sharp, giving orders to search carefully. The girl held her breath. If they found her, what would they do? Would they end her life quickly, or would they leave her to suffer? She wanted to scream, but her throat was dry and her voice was gone. Her body trembled. Her mind screamed for escape, but she could not move. Then, a shadow fell over her hiding place. A man, a human soldier, moved the broken piece of wall aside. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, the world froze. The soldier lifted his weapon slightly, his finger ready. The girl shut her eyes, waiting for the final moment, but the sound never came. Instead, she heard him call to the others. "I found someone," his voice said. Another soldier came near, shining a light on her weak form. The humans looked at her, confused, surprised, maybe even worried. The girl opened her eyes slowly, afraid. The first soldier crouched down, his weapon lowered now. His face was tired, but his eyes were calm. He reached out a hand, not with violence, but with care. The girl stared at the hand. It was strange. She had been told humans never helped, never cared. Yet here was one, offering a hand to her. She did not move. Fear held her still. The soldier spoke again, his voice softer, slower. She did not understand all the words, but she felt something in them, something warm, something she had never heard before. Her chest ached, her throat dry. But she whispered one word in her own language. "Why?" The human tilted his head, not understanding, but his eyes softened. He gently placed his water flask near her, pushing it toward her hand. Her fingers shook as she reached for it. The water touched her lips, cool and real, and for the first time in days, she felt life return. Around them, the other soldiers whispered. Some said to leave her. She was not their responsibility. Others said she could be a danger. But the soldier who found her did not step back. He stayed by her side, his hand still there. His eyes seemed to say one thing. "You are not alone now." The girl felt something strange inside her chest. It was not fear, not hate, not pain. It was something she had never known. Hope, small, fragile, but alive. The silence of the battlefield still hung around them. The smoke still rose into the sky, but for the first time, the girl did not feel like the world had ended. She looked at the human again, at the hand that had not hurt her, at the eyes that did not see her as weak or worthless. For the first time, she wondered if maybe her story was not finished. Maybe this was not the end, but the beginning. The girl lay weak on the cold ground, her breath shallow, her body shivering. The human soldier knelt beside her, his armor scratched, his face tired from battle, yet his eyes calm. He kept his weapon low now, no threat in his posture, only quiet care. She did not understand why. Her people had told her humans were only monsters, but this one did not look like a monster. He placed the water flask closer, waiting, not forcing. Her hand, her thin fingers shook as she tried to lift the flask, but her strength was gone. The soldier saw her struggle, and with slow, careful movement, he helped her raise it. The first sip burned her dry throat, then cooled it, sending a spark of life back into her veins. She coughed weakly, the water dripping down her chin, but she held on to it as if it was the only treasure in the world. The soldier nodded once, as if telling her she had done well. Behind him, other humans gathered, their voices low, their eyes unsure. One whispered, "She's one of them. We should leave her," another muttered. "It's not safe. What if she's a trap?" But the first soldier ignored them, his gaze fixed only on the girl. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder, steady and warm. The girl flinched at his touch at first, expecting pain, but none came. Instead, there was strength, quiet and steady, like a promise. Her mind screamed not to trust, but her heart felt something new. The soldier spoke softly, his words slow, as though he wanted her to understand. She caught only a few, but the tone itself carried meaning. He said something like, "Safe now, and not alone." She frowned, confused, but the warmth in his voice broke through her fear. For the first time since being left behind, she did not feel invisible. Her chest rose and fell faster. Emotion she did not understand fighting inside her. Could a human really mean her no harm? One soldier stepped closer, his face sharp, his eyes hard. "We don't have time for this," he said. "She'll slow us down. She's not our mission." The first soldier turned his head slightly, his jaw tight, but he did not move away from the girl. He stood between her and the others. The girl's eyes widened. She had seen humans fight, but this was different. This human was fighting not with weapons, but with choice. He was choosing her, a stranger, an enemy, over his own people's doubts. The second soldier muttered something angry and walked away. But the others stayed quiet, waiting, watching. The first soldier leaned down again, his face close enough for her to see the lines of exhaustion. Yet his eyes did not look at her with hate, only with a kind of tired determination. He offered his hand once more, steady, waiting. The girl stared at it, her heart pounding. Her people's words echoed in her head. "Humans will destroy you." Her breath shook as she raised her trembling hand. It hovered in the air, uncertain, fragile. Finally, she let her fingers touch his. His grip closed gently, not trapping, but holding. Her body relaxed against her will, a single tear rolling down her cheek. The soldier stood slowly, lifting her with care as if she weighed nothing. She wanted to resist, to cry out, but no sound came. Only silence. Her head rested against his chest plate, hearing the steady beat of his heart. It was strong, alive, steady. The sound comforted her in a way she did not understand. As he carried her, the camp lights appeared in the distance. The girl blinked weakly, her eyes struggling to stay open. The warmth of his hold fought against the cold fear inside her. She thought of the faces of her people who left her, their words sharp like knives. Now she was in the arms of a human, the very kind she was told to hate. The soldier glanced down at her, his eyes soft. "You're safe," he whispered again. Though she still only caught pieces of the meaning, but she felt it, not in the words, but in the way he looked at her. Her fingers clutched his armor, weak yet desperate. For the first time, she did not want to be let go. Around them, the other soldiers argued in whispers. Some said they should not waste resources. Others said leaving her behind was the safer choice. But the one carrying her did not stop, did not answer. He walked forward with a steady pace, as if nothing else mattered. The girl closed her eyes, her body giving into exhaustion. Her last thought before sleep was simple. Maybe not all humans were monsters. Maybe this one was different, and maybe, just maybe, she was not abandoned anymore. The human camp was not large, but it was alive with light and sound. Machines hummed, Fires burned in barrels, and soldiers moved with tired discipline. The girl had never seen so many humans together before. She clung to the soldier's armor. As he carried her inside, her heart beating fast, every eye turned toward them, surprise and doubt written on every face. The soldier placed her on a low bed inside a tent. The air smelled of medicine and oil, sharp and strange. A human with white gloves and a calm face leaned over her, checking her pulse, her breathing, her wounds. The girl flinched at the touch, fear returning for a moment. But the soldier who had saved her stood nearby, his presence steady, silent, like a shield. The medic spoke quickly, asking questions the girl could not understand. The soldier answered, his tone firm, leaving no space for refusal. The medic sighed but worked carefully, cleaning her cuts, wrapping cloth around her weak body. Pain stung with every touch, and she bit her lip to keep from crying out. But each time her eyes filled with fear. She found the soldier's calm gaze waiting, and somehow she endured. Night fell outside. But the camp did not sleep. The girl dozed. For a while, trapped in restless dreams, she saw again the faces of her people abandoning her, the sound of footsteps fading. She woke with a scream, her chest heaving. The humans around looked startled, some wary, but the soldier knelt quickly by her side. His voice was low, steady, a quiet stream against the storm of her fear. She could not understand the words, but she felt their weight. His hand rested near hers, not forcing, only waiting. Slowly, her trembling calmed. Her breath returned to normal. Her eyes closed again, not in terror this time, but in exhaustion. The soldier stayed until her sleep was deep and steady, even when others told him to rest. He refused. By morning, a sharp sound shook the camp. Alarms rang out, red lights flashed, and soldiers grabbed their weapons. The girl sat up weakly, confusion and fear rising. The soldier rushed back inside, his face tense, his weapon ready. The medic muttered something sharp, clearly worried about her condition. But the soldier's eyes locked on the girl, as if promising he would not let harm touch her. Outside, voices shouted, orders clashed, and heavy boots pounded the ground. The enemy had returned, searching for survivors, searching for revenge. The girl's heart froze. She knew that sound. The war cries of her own people. They had come back, not for her, but to finish what they started. Her body shook, torn between terror and sorrow. She whispered in her language, "They left me. Why do they come now?" The soldier glanced at her, his face unreadable, but his hand touched her shoulder gently. A silent answer. He left the tent, weapon raised. Joining the others, the girl wanted to crawl away, to hide. But she was too weak. The medic stayed, trying to calm her, but his voice could not quiet the storm in her chest. The sounds of battle erupted outside. Explosions shook the earth. Shouts echoed through the night. The girl covered her ears, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to believe the humans would survive, but fear told her all things die. Still, her eyes kept turning to the tent's flap, waiting, hoping. Every heartbeat felt like a hammer of doom. Minutes dragged like hours, until the flap burst open. The soldier returned, dust covering his armor, a cut on his cheek, but his eyes were steady, his steps strong. He looked at her first, as if to check she was safe before anything else. Her breath caught, relief flooding her chest. The medic rushed to patch his wound, but he brushed it aside, his gaze fixed only on her. The girl did not know why, but her lips whispered the word again. "Why?" The soldier did not answer in words. He only sat beside her bed. He placed his hand lightly over hers, warm and strong. And in that touch she felt the answer, because he refused to let her be alone. Outside, the battle raged, but inside the tent, a fragile bond grew. She was still weak, still afraid, still uncertain. But deep inside, a spark of trust began to glow. The fight for survival was not only about her body now, it was about her heart, her will to live. The soldier's presence told her one thing again and again. She was not forgotten. She was not abandoned. And maybe, just maybe, she had a place among these humans, The war outside was loud, cruel, merciless, but in the quiet of the tent, she felt something she had never felt before: safety. Asterisk. The night outside the camp was restless. The wind carried the smell of smoke and metal, a bitter reminder that the war was not far. Fires burned in the distance, tiny orange dots glowing like the eyes of predators watching in the dark. The girl sat on the bed inside the tent, her body wrapped in bandages, her eyes heavy with fear. Every sound outside made her flinch. Every shout or explosion twisted her stomach. The human soldier who had saved her stood near the entrance, his weapon across his chest. His posture was calm, but his eyes searched the horizon with quiet intensity. The girl studied him when she thought he would not notice. His armor was scarred, his face lined with exhaustion, yet he stood strong. He seemed like a wall that refused to fall, no matter how hard the world tried to break it. Other soldiers moved quickly through the camp, preparing defenses. Voices argued. Plans were made, weapons loaded. The girl could not understand their words, but she felt the tension in their tone. Fear and determination mixed in every movement. The humans knew the enemy was close. The girl's heart raced. She remembered her people's cruelty, their decision to leave her behind. Would they return tonight, not to save her, but to claim her death? Her hands trembled. Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. She whispered to herself, "They will find me." The soldier turned at her voice, his gaze steady and questioning. She shook her head quickly, wiping her tears, but he stepped closer, kneeling beside her. His voice was low, calm, like a river flowing slowly over stones. She caught only one word clearly: safe, safe. The word echoed in her mind, soft but powerful. She wanted to believe it, but doubt clawed at her heart. Her people had always spoken of safety as a lie, yet here was a human saying it with such certainty. The night deepened, and then it came, a low rumble across the ground, the sound of machines moving. Shadows stretched at the edge of the hills, dark figures rising against the starlight. The enemy had arrived, silent at first, then louder, their war cries slicing through the night. The camp erupted in alarm, soldiers rushing into position. The girl's breath caught, her body frozen. She knew that sound too well. The sharp rhythm of her people preparing to kill. Her chest tightened, fear choking her. She whispered, "No," again and again. Her body wanted to vanish into the ground, but she was too weak to move. The soldier placed his hand gently on her shoulder. His eyes met hers, strong and unshaken. He spoke short and firm, his tone like steel wrapped in fire. She did not understand all of it, but she knew what it meant. He would not let them take her. Outside, the first shots rang out. The night exploded with light and sound. Red bursts tearing through the darkness. The ground shook with each blast. The cries of soldiers filled the air. The humans fought fiercely, holding their line, refusing to break. The girl clutched the blanket around her, shaking with each explosion. The tent walls shook, dust falling from the poles. The medic rushed in and out, carrying supplies, shouting orders. He glanced at the girl, worry in his eyes, but he had no time to comfort her. The world outside was chaos, a storm of fire and shadow, and in that storm, she realized something. The humans were not fighting for power. They were not fighting for conquest. They were fighting to protect each other, to protect their home. They fought not with cruelty, but with loyalty. It was something her people had never shown her. The girl pressed her hand against her chest, her heart racing. She wondered why they fought so hard when they could have left her behind. She wondered why one soldier had chosen to stand by her side. A warmth stirred in her chest, strange but strong. It was the first spark of belonging. The night dragged on, the battle refusing to end. The humans pushed back, step by step, their shouts filling the air. The enemy shadows grew weaker, their cries fading. At last, silence returned, broken only by the crackle of fire and the moans of the wounded. The humans had held the line. The soldier returned to the tent, his armor marked with smoke and dust, his shoulders heavy, his face tired, but his eyes alive. He looked at the girl, and she felt her breath catch. For in his gaze, she saw victory, but also something more. A promise unspoken. The girl lowered her eyes, her lips trembling. She had seen humans through fear and lies, but tonight she saw the truth. They were not monsters, not destroyers. They were protectors, and she, abandoned and forgotten by her own kind, had been shielded by them. The shadows of war still lingered in the air, but in her heart, another shadow began to fade. The shadow of doubt, the shadow of despair. For the first time, she believed that maybe she was not destined to die alone. Maybe she had been found for a reason. The camp was quiet after the battle, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of exhaustion, of wounds carried both in the body and in the soul. Fires burned low. Shadows flickered across torn tents and broken machines. The humans worked without rest, tending to the injured, repairing their weapons. Preparing for what might come next, the girl sat inside the tent, her small hands clutching the blanket, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. She had seen war before, but never like this. Her people fought with cruelty, leaving the weak behind. But these humans fought for each other, covering their comrades, protecting the wounded, never letting go. Even when they were outnumbered, they refused to abandon one another. The image stayed in her mind, heavy and bright. The soldier who had saved her stood close by. He spoke little, but his presence was steady. Like the ground beneath her feet, he cleaned his weapon with slow, careful movements. Every scar on the metal a memory of survival. Sometimes his eyes would glance at her, calm and strong, reminding her she was not alone. Each glance gave her courage, even when her body still trembled. But deep inside, fear gnawed at her. She knew the enemy would return, stronger, angrier, ready to destroy. She also knew something she had not told the humans, something buried inside her, a secret her people had feared, a gift or a curse that had made them abandon her. That night, the sky burned again. The enemy returned with fire and fury, their machines roaring across the hills. The ground shook as explosions ripped through the earth. The humans shouted, running to their positions, weapons blazing. The girl's heart pounded, her hands clutched her chest, her breath sharp and fast. The medic rushed past her, carrying supplies. The soldier looked back at her once, his eyes filled with determination. He spoke a word she now understood. Stay. But as he turned to leave, her voice cracked weakly. No. He paused, confusion flickering across his face, but there was no time to question. The enemy swarmed closer, their shadows falling over the camp. The humans fought with all their strength, but the numbers were too many. The air was thick with smoke. The cries of the wounded filled the night. The girl's body shook. Memories of being left behind stabbing her heart. She could not let it happen again, not to them, not to the ones who had refused to abandon her. She closed her eyes, and deep inside, something stirred. It was a force she had always tried to hide. A power that frightened even her own people. Her hands glowed faintly, a pale light breaking through her trembling fingers. Energy hummed in her veins, wild and dangerous. She gasped, her chest burning, her body shaking. The soldier saw it from across the tent, his eyes widening. For a moment, he thought it was fear. But then he realized it was something else. The girl was standing, weak but firm, her small frame glowing in the dark. He shouted something, warning her, telling her to stop, but she shook her head, her eyes shining with determination. The enemy pushed closer, their weapons ready to destroy. The girl stepped forward, raising her hands. A wave of energy burst from her palms, bright and fierce. It cut through the smoke, crashing against the enemy with a sound like thunder machines. Twisted, shadows broke, cries of shock filled the night. The humans froze for a moment, staring at the small, fragile girl standing in the center of the storm. Her power burned brighter, forcing the enemy back. The ground cracked beneath her, light spreading like veins through the earth. She screamed, not in fear, but in defiance. Her voice carried through the chaos, shaking even her own heart. The soldier rushed to her side, shielding her with his body as the energy faded. She fell to her knees, her body weak, her breath ragged. The soldier caught her before she hit the ground, his arms steady, his voice urgent. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears and pain. "I can help," she whispered in her language, her voice breaking. The humans around her murmured. Stunned, some looked afraid of what they had just seen. Others looked amazed, whispering about the power that had saved them. But the soldier held her close, his face calm, his eyes clear. He did not look at her with fear, only with pride. Girl's vision blurred, her strength draining, but in the soldier's arms, she felt something she had never known, acceptance. Her power had not driven him away. It had only brought him closer, and for the first time, she was not afraid of what she was. The night still burned outside. The war was not over, but in that moment, a new battle had been won, the battle inside her heart, for she had found her hidden strength. And she had chosen to use it not for hate, but for hope. And the humans had seen her not as a burden, but as one of their own. Asterisk. The night of battle passed. But the camp did not feel victorious. The fire still burned low, smoke still curled into the sky, and the cries of the wounded echoed in the air. The humans had survived, but only barely. And in the middle of it all, the alien girl lay weak in her bed, her body drained from using the power she had hidden for so long. She opened her eyes slowly, the world spinning, her chest heavy. The soldier was sitting beside her again, his armor covered in dust, his face pale with exhaustion, yet his eyes were awake, watching her closely. When she tried to move, his hand stopped her gently, his voice calm but firm. She did not understand every word, but she knew what he meant. Rest. The girl looked away, her heart twisting. She had shown them her secret, the power that made her people fear her, the reason they abandoned her, and now these humans had seen it too. Would they turn away like her own kind? Would they call her a danger, a curse? Her eyes filled with tears, but she kept them hidden in the shadow of the tent. Outside, voices rose in argument. Some soldiers spoke angrily, their tones sharp, their fear clear. "She is dangerous," one said. "We should not keep her here." Another argued, "She saved us. Without her we would be dead." The voices clashed like swords, striking fear into the girl's fragile heart. She curled into herself, her fingers clutching the blanket tight. Her body shook, not from weakness now, but from the storm inside her. She did not want to be abandoned again, not after she had finally felt what it meant to belong. Her chest ached with the thought of being left in the cold once more. She whispered softly, "Please, don't leave me," though no one understood the words. The soldier entered the argument outside, his voice cutting through the others. He stood firm, his tone unshaken, his eyes hard with conviction. He reminded them of what she had done, of the lives she had saved. He said she was not the enemy, that she was a child who had chosen to fight for them. The camp grew quiet under his words, though doubt still lingered in their faces. The girl heard the silence return, and soon the soldier came back to her side. He sat near her again, his hand resting lightly on the edge of her bed. When their eyes met, she saw no fear in him, only steady trust. Her lips trembled as she whispered in her own language, "Why do you protect me?" The soldier did not understand the words, but somehow he understood the meaning. He gave no long answer, no speech. Instead, he simply reached out, placing his hand gently over hers. The warmth of his touch spoke louder than words. It told her that she was not a burden, not a curse. It told her that she belonged here, if she chose to. But her heart was not free from conflict. For the next day, a message arrived. Carried by the shadows of war, it was from her own people, their voices crackling over stolen signals. They demanded her return, calling her one of their own. They said she was needed, though she knew the truth. They wanted control of her power, not her life. The humans argued once more. Some said handing her over would end the attacks, bring peace to the camp. Others refused. knowing her people had abandoned her once and would use her now. The soldier stood among them, his jaw tight, his hand near his weapon, as if he would fight his own comrades if he had to. The girl sat quietly in her tent, listening, her heart torn in two. She remembered the faces of her people, cold and merciless. She remembered the soldier's hand reaching for hers when she was weakest. One side called her blood, the other side gave her hope. One side had left her to die. The other had refused to let go. Her choice weighed heavy, pressing down on her chest until she could hardly breathe. That night, she could not sleep. The stars above burned cold, watching without care. She sat outside the tent for the first time, her legs trembling but steady. The soldier stood nearby, silent as always, his presence like a wall at her back. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "Where do I belong?" The soldier turned his head slightly. Hearing her voice, though not her words, he did not answer, but his silence was not empty. It was full of patience, full of quiet strength, as if he knew she was fighting a war inside herself that no weapon could win. A war of the heart. A war of belonging. The girl closed her eyes, tears sliding down her face. She realized that the turning point had come. Soon she would have to choose return to the ones who had abandoned her, or stay with the ones who had protected her. Her power was no longer just her own. It was a bond that tied her to both sides, and whichever choice she made would change her life forever. The shadows of war still lingered at the edge of the camp, but now a deeper shadow had risen inside her heart, the shadow of choice, heavy and unshakable. She whispered again, "Please, don't let me go." And the soldier, though he did not understand her words, answered in silence by staying at her side. The camp was restless, heavy with unspoken fear. The enemy had pulled back after their last assault, but everyone knew it was not the end. The air felt like the pause before a storm, sharp and heavy. The humans prepared for another attack, reinforcing their defenses while their voices whispered in doubt. And in the center of it all sat the alien girl, her heart torn between two worlds. Her people had sent a message, demanding her return. They called her one of their own, pretending she mattered, though she knew the truth. She remembered how they left her, their footsteps fading, their voices cold. Now they wanted her again, not for love, not for family, but for her power. Her body trembled at the thought, her heart aching with the weight of the decision. The soldier who had saved her never left her side. He saw the pain in her eyes, though she said nothing. He understood without words that she was being pulled in two directions. Sometimes his hand would rest gently on her shoulder, reminding her she was not alone. His silence spoke louder than any speech, steady and unbreakable. At dawn, the shadows appeared again. Her people stood on the hills, their banners high, their weapons ready. Their voices carried across the wind, demanding her return. The humans gathered at the edge of their camp, their weapons raised, their hearts hard. The tension crackled like fire between dry branches, ready to burn. The girl stood weakly, her legs trembling, her eyes full of tears. Her people shouted her name, their voices sharp, promising safety, promising family. But she remembered their words when they abandoned her. Too weak, not worth saving. Her chest tightened, her breath shallow. And then she looked at the humans around her, battered and scarred, but unyielding. Some of them were afraid of her, she knew that, but they had fought beside her, accepted her strength when it saved them. And the soldier, the one who first reached out his hand, looked at her now with no fear. His eyes held only one truth. He would not let her go, not to those who had left her to die. The enemy leader stepped forward, his voice loud and cruel. "Give her to us, or face destruction," he shouted. His soldiers raised their weapons, their shadows long and dark. The humans shifted, uneasy, their camp already weak from the last fight. Whispers spread, some saying it would be easier to hand her over. The girl's heart broke, her breath catching in her throat. Would the humans abandon her too? Would they trade her life for their safety? Her body shook with fear, her hands clutching her chest. She wanted to scream, to beg them not to let her. Go. But her voice was too weak, her throat too tight. Then the soldier stepped forward, his stance firm, his weapon at his side. He looked at the enemy, his voice sharp, steady, echoing through the camp. "She stays," he said. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of stone. Behind him, other soldiers raised their weapons higher, standing at his side. The girl's eyes filled with tears, her heart racing. They were not giving her away. They were standing for her, not because of her power, but because of who she was now, one of them. Her chest ached with something she had never felt before, belonging. The enemy roared in anger, their soldiers charging forward. The battle exploded. Fire and steel clashing once more, the humans fought with desperate strength, each one refusing to give ground. The girl felt the storm inside her rise again, her power stirring. She stepped out from the tent, her body weak but her spirit fierce. Light spread from her hands, her voice rising in defiance. She unleashed her strength, not to destroy, but to protect. Her energy spread like a shield across the camp, blocking the first wave of the enemy's fire. The humans fought within that shield, their courage burning brighter. Together, human and alien stood as one. The enemy faltered, their cries of anger turning to confusion. They had expected to take her easily, to break her spirit. Instead, they found her stronger than ever, surrounded by those who refused to let her go. The battlefield burned with fire and light, but hope shone brighter than fear. And slowly, the enemy began to retreat, their shadows breaking apart. When the last of them vanished into the night, silence returned. The camp was scarred, wounded, but alive. The girl fell to her knees, her body weak, her strength spent. The soldier rushed to her side, catching her before she collapsed, his arms steady, his voice low, repeating one word she now understood fully: safe. Her tears fell freely as she clung to him. She was no longer the abandoned survivor, no longer the weak child left to die. She had found strength, and more than that, she had found a family. The humans had stood for her when no one else would. They had refused to let her go. The night sky stretched above them, dark but endless. And for the first time, the girl looked at it not with fear, but with hope. Her story was not finished. It had only just begun. She was not alone, not forgotten, not abandoned. She was one of them now, and she would never be left behind again.